Hi. Hi, everyone. Thanks for being here. Let's just give a short intro about what you can get from data, what I call data takeout. We'll see what a data takeout is in a few seconds. But I'd like to start with some, this is an image that has been out quite a lot in the last few months about, with a negative connotation. It's like European regulation are just basically making rules, like getting a common plug, while the rest of the world is actually doing innovation. Well, today I would like to talk about something different. A European rule that actually is now widespread around the world and is helping the end user and how the end user can take advantage of it. Yeah, I took these pictures last week in a old mobike on, I think it was Schenauzer. And yes, we have many data services, many providers where we claim, oh yeah, they exist because they hold our data. And we complain about how they hold our data. But actually, we usually have two problems. One is we don't know which kind of data they really hold. Because if I ask anyone, it's usually, yeah, you have a feeling, but you hardly know about it. And second, you hardly ask the provider to give the data that they own, that they collect about yourself. So yeah, I don't want to go through GDPR. I'm not a lawyer. I want to actually, I'm a software engineer, but I don't want to present it from a software engineer background, more from a end user background. Yeah, GDPR is something that has been around a few years, and we're always usually annoyed by having to click too often about cookies. But one of the interesting parts is that under Article 15 of GDPR, you're allowed to obtain a copy of your personal data by a data controller. I don't want to go into details what copy of the personal data means, what the boundaries are, because there are some gray areas. But we can simplify saying that all the data that you give to a provider, that they keep on their server, that they keep about yourself, well, if you ask them, they have to give them back to you. How and what kind of terms and how long it takes is a different story, but let's simplify a bit. Under what we call it a data takeout under GDPR, is usually an asynchronous process. What do I mean by asynchronous is, well, you ask the data provider, but you don't get the data immediately. I mean, it will be a bit hard as well to implement that you click a button and you get immediately all your data, but they have up to 30 days to provide your data. They can extend that up to 3 months under good reason and notifying you that they need a bit more time, but ideally they have to give you your data in 30 days. There is no strict standard format. We'll see in a second how different providers handle that and why it's not a bad thing not to have a standard format. But generally talking, there should be, and actually under the law, should be structured and machine readable. So you can expect, I don't know, CSV files, JSON, some text file, but something you can process. And has to be provided under most scenario free of charge. Of course, if you ask the data controller or a data provider for your data every 2 days, and that data is 5 terabytes of data, they might, under the law, charge you for the cost associated with that. But generally speaking, that's not the case. Generally speaking, you can get the data for free and play with it. And a key point is as well, this is an example from Dropbox, but most providers do the same, is it would be too complicated for most global services to implement those rules for just European users or foreign users in Europe and so on. So usually what you can have doesn't really depend on you being Europe or be European citizen. It's just that they implement the same way to take out your data for all the users. How do you do it? Well, it doesn't have to be a backup system or Dropbox or anything like that. This is, for example, Duolingo. Even Duolingo, you can ask for your data takeout from the website. You receive after a few days or a few hours, a few minutes, an email where you can, well, you have a link, you download your zip, and that's what they know about you. In that case, well, I don't go through that one, but you can expect they know what language you have learned, what extra sentence you have said right, which sentence you say wrong, and almost all, for example, when you log in, when you log out, and whatever. Well, Why am I passionate about this? Actually, I'm not passionate. I had to implement it myself as a software architect for a company, for different projects. And I'm definitely not a lawyer, so I don't want to, I mean, if you need to think about how to implement it yourself or what has to be in and what is legal and what is not, that's not my field. But this is, for example, a service here in Germany, or to cloud. If you store your data there, you can do the same. You can go to your profile and click a link that will send you by email or by SMS. I can't remember which one is the favorite way, whatever. You get a link to download your data, or multiple links. I say before there's no standard, and actually that's pretty obvious that the law doesn't really enforce a standard. The reason is, we saw before, for example, something like Duolingo, it might be 50 kilobyte or just a small 1 megabyte file because there are no binaries, no backup, no nothing. If you probably use Dropbox or a large provider where you store your pictures or your personal data, you might have, I had to deal with data takeout of 50 terabyte, and then probably you don't serve it in the same way to the end user as a small file. It's probably not just one zip file as a JSON file. Anyway, this common one is Google, as one of the most sophisticated one, as they have 10,000 different services. You can as well schedule when you want it. You can say, I want to have one every 2 months. I want to export it just one time, every 2 months. Which kind of format do you want to have? You want to have it as a zip file, usually it's a compressed file, but usually end of the day you receive some links. You have an amount of time you can download your links, and that's it. Cool. That's a sentence we always love to say, yeah, if you are not paying for the product, you are the product, so you are the data, that's great. How many people are actually usually asking for data takeout? Well, very few. Just a fraction, at least of the service where I was able to ask that information as well internally, is a fraction of the user. The reason is twofold. One, user tend to complain, don't know about it, don't want to have it. It might be cumbersome or whatever. As well, service provider, probably is a bit strong, cannot promote it, but they have really no interest in promoting it. It's a cost for them. Most service based on public cloud, you pay a lot for taking data out of the cloud. So once you start to pay for data, the service has no interest. They have to provide it to you if you ask, but it's not that they have to advertise you that, oh yeah, come here and get a copy of your data. So anyway, how big are those data? Well, this is an example, a few I had on my hard drive, but yeah, you can go from a few megabytes to, that's the largest one on this drive is probably 11 gigabyte. That's still quite small, it can be much bigger. So let's start looking at some of them. TikTok has had a really bad reputation. I've had long discussion with my daughter about how she's using it. Probably I spend most time discussing with my daughter how she's using that, how much time she's really using it. But is that really bad in terms of how they store the data and how they use it? Actually, I'm quite surprised it was one of the best one in terms of processing the data. But we'll see in a second what kind of data they have. And I was pretty curious to see if it's really true, well, this is still an old one, that, yeah, that you can get addicted. They always claim that, yeah, you just need 260 videos on TikTok to be addicted to the platform, and that takes usually less than 35 minutes to get addicted, because you watch 260 videos in 35 minutes. I was pretty skeptical about that at the beginning, before really seeing the data, and that's a very conservative number. So the data I show now is a very simplification of what I usually do, because I really want to show it from a not developer point of view. So I'm not processing any JSON file, I'm not doing any development in Python or any other language. But this, for example, we start with TikTok. This is once you open the zip file, that's what you have. Start set of folders with some names, quite obvious, like your activity, probably is the most interesting one. So you go to your activity, you see, I don't know, a few files. Some are quite small, usually the bigger one are the most interesting, like 7 megabytes of URLs, login history, and let's look. Not doing any demo today because I know how it's going to end up, but this is how a login file is. So you have, for every time you log in on the platform, they show you what data they kept about you. So you have, if you have used the platform for 1 year, 2 years, or whatever, you end up with a bunch of these kind of records where they tell you from where you logged in, was Wi-Fi, was a carrier, so mobile network, which platform you use. Interesting up to a point if you really want to track what kind of data they have. You can always ask them to delete that data. But what can we really learn from those data? Well, let's start to play a bit with the data. So TikTok, for example, provide you as well some summaries. These, they tell you is not up to date, but they give you an idea. For example, this all data takeout. They tell you number of videos you have watched until the end. That's 43,000. That's quite an impressive number. That's not my account, by the way. But what is that watch history? You can see that what they store for you about you is, of course, they store every video they show you. Everything that comes through your feed is there. So you have a list of, that's the tail, that's the last few I had in that file. So you see which, I'm hiding a few digits just not to make the video public, but the data is all there. So you can look at all your video, what you have watched, when. And yeah, I thought, can you do it with, what can you learn from it? Even simply ChatGPT, general AI. I'm doing this demo using public data with a free account, so I don't want to go into personal data, so I'm doing a couple of things. First one is sanitize the data, so remove personal, as much as possible personal information. So for example, I'm not using the URLs. And as well, I try to reduce the size of the data, because of course you don't want to process many megabytes of data at a single time. But for example, what I was interested in here was not much about the URL that we saw here, so I didn't care too much about the link. I was more interested really on the date, for example, and how many I have. So without any Gen AI, you can see I have 188,000 URL. So 188,000 video that TikTok shows me, or at least showed me, and we know from the other statistics about a quarter have been watched at the end. And you can see, yeah, you have a video every few seconds. Great. So what can you ask? I was lazy, I could process the data myself, but as a node developer, I can even ask ChatGPT, just not even saying what this data is. I'm not even saying it's TikTok. I'm just saying, okay, this is a list of dates. Tell me how many video I've watched, how many links I have per day, and any other useful statistics. So you can see that I have over 500 videos per day. That's pretty bad. I go up to almost 2,000. And what other data you can have? You can start to play with. Actually, you are suggested by the platform itself to give you other statistics. So you like viewing pattern by hour, weekdays, inactive days, session duration. Well, just simply, I haven't drawn anything. That's just the output of of ChatGPT in this case. You can see the pattern during the months, the pattern during, the hours of the day, pretty obvious which time of the day you mostly use it, and time of the week. And then I was curious as well, what has been the minimum amount of time required to view 260 records? Usually, ChatGPT is pretty bad on those records, but then I checked the data myself, it's actually true. It took less than 17 minutes to process 260 videos. So it's actually, you get addicted quite quickly if it's enough to, or at least to get the algorithm trained with 260 videos is just really a few minutes. Anyway, I don't want to spend all the time on TikTok. I just want to show as well that data is very different platforms, but they're usually very easy to process. We said before, Google has crazy information about you. Well, almost all if you're Android users. I don't want to go through Gmail or whatever else. I wanted just to use something like, I don't know, about location, what kind of information I have about my location. So I just download the record as JSON file, and you have a long, huge file that shows you a crazy amount of data point in JSON. The timestamp in millisecond is basically when it happens, up to the millisecond. So like right now, where I am with latitude and longitude, some accuracy as well, some activity that they try to do reverse engineer from how you move and what you do. They're able to say, well, most likely is in a vehicle, from the speed, I assume, or if it's still, or if it's unknown. So I decided not to process the JSON, just to have a count of files, in this case, in the file. No Gen AI here. I'm just looking at the data. I have 332,000 data points with a guest activity. That's more or less 10 years of data. That gives you already an idea that in a normal user, I tried 2 to 3 different users, it's not very different. You have about, well, every year is about 365 days, 332,000, so we are talking about, let's say generously is 10 years of data, it's not, but let's say 100, at least data point per day. That's quite a lot. I mean, I was able, I don't want to do it because it's a bit personal, but you're able basically to draw where you have been in the last 10 years. I mean, do a nice floating thing showing the entire way you've been around the world. And you can guess as well what you have done. You can go through the location type. You can see that I haven't been running that much, as I thought at least. I've been probably working a bit. I have no idea what X in a vehicle means and how do they determine that, but there are quite a few weird ones, but that's what you get from Google. What I was mostly curious about was Amazon, because if you think about Amazon, at least Maker had really a crazy amount of data, because I can think about shopping, I can think about well, cloud data, as I'm using a lot AWS, but as well audio, Alexa, or whatever. And I've used the account in a few countries, but what I didn't expect was to have this kind of data takeout. This is just a subset of folders that is entirely, I will call it, unfriendly as a style. I mean, compared to TikTok, where it was clear what was where, here you have like a crazy amount of directory where you have to go through. There's a document that explains a bit what those directories are supposed to be, but you can find, if you play a bit, some weird data. For example, you can find the list of all the advertisers who bought audience in which you are included. That's mostly US one that I assume was when I had an account in the US, but that's what it is. Or you can tail, that's what I did with the latest one. You can look at the Prime Video location, and that's the location that Prime Video is simply assuming in which country you are for, I assume, copyright and content goals, and when you move. So basically, I have, I don't know how many data points in that file, but basically I was able to see that in about 2 years, it was quite reliable. I spent 75% of my time in Germany, 18% of the time in Italy, and a few other weird spots. But yeah, you can play with that a lot. Retail, you have as well, of course, is a retail company. You have all your data there. So I would say this is a recent one, but you basically have the PDF of every single invoice Amazon has given you. I'm not going to show you, and you can as well figure out how much, of course, you paid across 20 years to Amazon, how much VAT you get. That's, all the data is there. Some I'm not showing it because yeah, it's a bit personal, but that's more or less the idea. So, why I want to show those examples? I've seen a few use cases. First one is we keep complaining about we share too much data. Those companies are pretty bad and they steal our data. We don't know what they do with our data. That's probably true. I'm not saying that they are good guys. I'm just saying that the very first step should be that you know what extra data they have. And as they don't advertise that, and it costs them to give it to you, just ask. You don't even have to download it. I mean, you just ask for it, have a feeling how big is that data, keep a copy if you want, or leave it there. Usually you have like, it's not there forever. Once you ask for the data, they give you a time frame that should be reasonable, like, I don't know, 7 days, 30 days, according to the size. That's twofold. One side has to be user-friendly, that you have the time to download it. On the other side, it has to be safe enough because it's your data, so you don't want to have a link that is available forever in your inbox. You can really spot some trends in your social media or usage of application. Doesn't have to be social media. I was able to have better argument with my daughter about her TikTok usage or her Instagram usage or whatever. Didn't change the result, but at least I had some real data point. You can find some surprising things that companies have learned about you. I mean, in the sense that you might find certain data are obvious. I mean, I'm not surprised that, for example, Amazon has all the search that you have performed in the browser when you were searching for a product, unless you ask to delete the data, that you can always do. What surprised me, for example, I had no idea of the list of the certain information are not available through the browser, through the application, like which advertiser bought your name, or better, your account ID in the list of the campaign. So that's something you can figure it out. And that gives you as well a bit of a feeling how they profiled you, in what kind of category you ended up. Well, just a bit joking, but you can find, I was not able to find a PDF of a purchase I had from a company. I didn't have the email. The only way I was able actually to download my own PDF of the receipt was actually to ask an old data takeout. And that was 3 years old invoice. I was able still to find it. Anyway, so key takeaway is privacy starts with awareness. So know what data you're actually sharing. Of course, your data, as we always say, belongs to you. So as a minimum, take control is ask your data. The only way, I'm not saying fight back. I never like the word fight back too much, but the only way you can really argument of what data they have, if it's correct, if it's too much, if it's too little, how you feel about it, is to at least know what they have. If you use the generative AI is a good idea if you don't want to be a developer and play too much with code. But make sure to reduce a bit your data. I mean, it's sensitive data usually. Use it to find pattern, not to process the full data. There are no single formats, so there's not an app that you can create that process all your data takeout and do the logic for all of them. But there are quite some standard. Usually it's a JSON file. If it's not a JSON file, it's a text file. If it's not a text file, it's some CSV or whatever. But if you are in tech, of course, there are good libraries out there as well you can play around and use. And yeah, and basically go deeper than just when you think about your social habit or your apps or whatever. Don't just look at how much time you spend on the app. You can go and look exactly what you did on the app and what was wrong. And as well, you can, for example, see much easier the trend. Are you using more than a few months ago? I'm not saying addicted is a strong word, but when do you use it more? And so on. So don't just complain about data issues, just act and go out, take your data and play with it. With that one, big thank you. If you have any question, I'm here. And that's how you can reach me.